Hello and welcome to Below the Surface. I'm your host, Stephanie Cavigliano. Before we kick off the show today, just a couple of reminders. You can ask questions in the comments section below, and we will make sure that our experts answer them during the duration of the session. Also, let me know where you're tuning in from. So today we are discussing the state of network security, the ongoing threat from ransomware, and the rise of SASE. So let's go ahead and bring on our guests. I'd like to welcome to the show Vice President of Zero Trust Access at Barracuda, Sinan Eren, and Vice President of Product Marketing, Mike Goldgof. Welcome to the show, Sinan and Mike.
Hello.
Great to be here.
Great to have you both. So before we get started with some of the questions, can you tell our audience a little bit about yourselves? Mike, maybe you can start us off.
Sure. So at Barracuda, I am responsible for product marketing for what we call DNA, Data Network and Application Security. And I've been with the company for 2 years, but I've been in the security space for 20 years, and it's been quite a ride. So that's about me.
Thanks, Mike.
Well, similar to Mike, I've been in cybersecurity for 20 years plus at this point, and I'm the product owner for our Zero Trust portfolio, which includes Zero Trust Network Access and web security products.
Excellent. Thanks, Sinan. So, Mike, Barracuda recently launched a new market report about the state of network security. Can you tell us a little bit about the report?
Sure, absolutely. So this was a very interesting study because there's so much going on in network security and work from home and everything. But basically, we went out to, we surveyed 750 IT decision makers who are responsible for things like networks, security, remote work within their companies. And we asked them a lot of questions about what's going on, about their user needs, about the threat environment, and that's the report. And very excited about talking about the findings today.
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds really interesting. So, which findings really stood out to you?
So I think the most important thing is that it's very clear that organizations are experiencing network breaches, and many of those breaches also involve ransomware. And at the same time, the IT departments are still struggling with this whole remote work situation, both in terms of security as well as in terms of user experience. And, there's a lot of background in the report. I'm gonna invite everybody to download it, take a look at it. But a lot of interesting things happening from that perspective.
Yeah, definitely a lot of challenges. So I have to ask, was there any good news in the report?
Yeah, actually there was, yes. And what we found out is that the good news is that the organizations and the IT organizations are planning to invest and are investing in some of the new technologies that are often described as SASE, Secure Access Service Edge. And those are things specifically like, Zero Trust Network Access, SD-WAN, XDR, those types of technologies. And, so I think there's hope to that, all of these technologies are going to help organizations. And we're seeing some evidence of the fact that it is helping.
Now, you mentioned that we discovered some key findings about ransomware, and we hear ransomware kind of come in and out of the news, and it's having a moment in the spotlight, unfortunately. What did we discover about ransomware in this report?
Yeah, so unfortunately, what we found out is that almost 75% of the organizations have experienced at least one ransomware attack in just the last 12 months. So it's just happening at an accelerated rate, and of course, the costs and consequences can be devastating. I mean, and also the other thing is that these ransomware attacks, they're transforming and changing. It's no longer just people going, trying to take advantage of an open RDP port, although that does happen. A lot of times these attacks are planned. And you may have noticed the whole campaign that Barracuda is running around, sort of like, don't pay the ransom and the 1, 2, 3. The whole idea that the attacks are so complex that you need to protect your email and users against phishing. You need to protect access to your applications and your networks, and you need to back up your data. So it requires a lot of technology to protect against ransomware. And I think, Sinan, you have some strong thoughts around, what's happening with ransomware.
Right. Thanks, Mike. Yeah, I mean, I do agree. It's a massive issue. It's accelerating. There is a whole thriving, burgeoning industry behind ransomware, right? With the ease of access to, credentials from the dark web. Of course, the cryptocurrencies, being able to move money across borders without getting, any kind of financial sanctions, any kind of financial fraud detection systems, even have a chance to stop the flow of money and proceeds from these campaigns. It's a thriving industry. It's every criminal's dream, essentially. So I see it as a major systemic risk to nation states going forward. You might even call it kind of a gray swan event on the horizon. Let's not call it black swan, because we all do. We all talk about it. We know it's a growing issue, but it might turn into a rather systemic risk that might even have macroeconomic implications for the world economy. I think it's that serious, right? And we usually think about it, well, maybe it's more about the SMEs and SMBs, less sophisticated players get tangled up in the ransomware attacks, but that's not true. It's all across the board. The attacks are multi-pronged. As I say, there's a burgeoning industry with multiple players. Some will do the phishing campaigns and provide credentials to the ransomware gangs. Some will move the cryptocurrency and turn it into gift cards and goods and cash, right? So there's a whole industry now being basically not just growing, but it's thriving, right? So it is a major systemic risk. One last thing I'll say on this: I was recently talking to a dental office through a friend's dentist. Basically, they've been through a ransomware incident, and this particular friend happens to be a lawyer. And he advised them to actually go ahead, even though they were able to successfully recover the data. He advised them to go ahead and pay because of the potential liability. So ransomware essentially turning into an extortionware of some sort, right? Even if though you recover your data, they still have your data. They still have your patient information, their credit card numbers in some occasions, their financial and personal and health information. So even then, if you are able to recover, you might end up paying nonetheless, right? So it is a very complex problem, and it seems to be on accelerating. And we should definitely look into not just recovery, but also prevention. I think that's going to remain at the core.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's devastating to companies, and I think one of the things is that's telling is insurance companies that provide insurance, against ransomware are actually having trouble making money, even though they keep raising the premiums. And it's a very complex problem to deal with. I agree with the prevention comment. And interestingly, back to the report, what we found out is that 80% of the companies experienced a network reach just in the last 12 months. And when you look back at the ransomware being almost 75%, what we are seeing very clearly, most network breaches now in some way end up with a ransomware attack or involved or part of a ransomware attack. So it's a lot going on in that space.
Yeah, it makes sense. It's a great way for cyber criminals to monetize that data breach. Those statistics are really sort of mind-boggling. So I invite all of our audience members to take a look at that report and see for themselves. So let's move on from ransomware a little bit. Now, Mike, what were some of the findings about remote work, something many of us can relate to?
Right, and I think that we have a slide that we're going to show on this. Obviously there's been a lot of changes, most people working from home during COVID. And now as we're starting to sort of come out of the pandemic, we've asked questions about what proportion of the organization is working remotely and what sort of the projections are. And what we found out is, as you can see here, only 14% are working in the office, only in the office today. But even more interesting is, even as IT departments look out 2 years, it's still going to be under 40% that are going to be permanently working from the office. So the majority, it's very clear that the future of work is hybrid. And I think what that means is that the IT departments need to be prepared to support their users. And it's going to continue to be a challenge, both from supporting the users from the user experience perspective, as well as from the security perspective. And on that, we also found out, because we asked about the user experience, and we also found out that people are, at least some of the time, experiencing issues with slow applications, dropped calls, things like that. And that is despite the fact that they have very fast internet connections, because we asked them about that. So Sinan, maybe you can talk a little bit about, like, why would all these users be still experiencing issues even though they have very fast internet at home?
Right. I mean, we always assume that maybe the issue was, the taxing on the bandwidth, leaving your home, right? Sharing it with your virtual schooling children, your spouse, whatever that might be. That usually is what we pointed the finger at. But turns out, there is enough bandwidth out there. The ISPs really upped their game, especially during the pandemic. I think there's a bit of actually a outdated infrastructure, or let's say, if your security stack for your business is still driven more from the the legacy appliance stack that you have to backhaul traffic to provide security for your distributed users, that really downgraded their experience when it comes to access, right? And vendors, for that matter, take Microsoft, when it comes to Office 365, really cautions customers not to backhaul their traffic for Office 365 and downgrade the experience for the employees, right? So when we talk about delivering security at the edge, that's exactly what we mean. Edge is in as close to the endpoint, as close to where the users are, rather than backhauling them to however many POPs you might have around the globe. That's really not the point. The point is to not backhauling the traffic, not adding additional latency, and bringing everybody to a choke point, rather than pushing the security controls to the real edge, which is the endpoint themselves, wherever the users happens to be, at home, traveling, in a hotel lobby, using the shared Wi-Fi, whatever that might be, right? So that really seems to be a challenge if you're backhauling traffic to a legacy security stack and kind of downgrading everybody's experience along the way. Instead, we are proposing going forward to push the controls to the edge, and do away with this latency and bandwidth challenges.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where, kind of like this whole SASE philosophy is all about, isn't it? Because people are now in the remote work environment. The IT departments have been moving applications to the cloud, but a lot of times they forget about the security stack, as you were talking about. And in order to they're just continuing to backhaul everything, and that's leads to these poor experiences. The other thing I wanted to sort of mention from a perspective of the report, most of us are sharing the internet connections with the rest of our sort of home users, and I guess that also could contribute to some security issues, because you are like, how do you know from IT department perspective what's happening on the other side? Like, is that network secure, or the device is secure? Like, what's going on there? So I would imagine that is an issue as well.
Yeah, I mean, most certainly. Which one of us hasn't picked up a no-name fly-by-night, brand off of Amazon and just connected to our Wi-Fi network, right? I'm guilty of this. It's the holiday seasons again. We're gonna pull out these IoT-enabled, decorative lights, and they're gonna change color, and drove, little images here and there. It's going to be all interactive, all and nice, but I'm definitely volunteering my my SSID, my Wi-Fi password to some no name. Actually, there's not even a proper branding on these gadgets that I put on my network, which I share with this laptop right now, right? So yes, this is a major challenge, that you do share your network with all kind of OEM IoT devices. Your service provider, your cable company is going to give you a DVR that you put on your Wi-Fi network, or it might actually be the Wi-Fi network itself, right? You have no idea what sort of an OEM that is, what sort of third-party software that's running on it. So it is indeed a challenge. You don't even at your own home own your network. There's so many other devices that share with that you don't have perfect visibility. So that exposes, of course, in due to sharing this network pipe, you're exposing your corporate environments and corporate workloads to those devices. Right, you need to have better microsegmentation in place in order to prevent those devices from hopping into additional networks.
So, Sinan, on that note, what did the participants of this report say about their technology adoption?
Well, it was encouraging, I would say. 40 to 50% have already deployed a flavor of SD-WAN or zero trust network access. Only 3% of them said they had no plan, and about half of them are planning to adopt some of these microsegmentation and SD-WAN like network fabric technologies going forward. So it's encouraging. Of course, the pandemic accelerated the adoption curve. So we see that businesses at various sizes and scales are on the right track when it comes to building a proper security stack in place to support their distributed work from home employees.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense, right? Because the other thing that we found out that we asked about was kind of how quickly people are deploying and how far they are down this journey in deploying their applications in public cloud. And what we found out is that 56% have either most or all of their applications now running in the public cloud. And so I think it makes perfect sense, this technology adoption, because some of these technologies are designed to protect these kinds of environments that are hybrid and increasingly more cloud environments. So the deployment of these SaaS technologies makes a lot of sense given sort of the bigger trend of everything moving to the cloud.
So with all these deployments in the public cloud, how is security handled there? Sinan, maybe you can answer that.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, a lot of these vendors do leverage some of the cloud vendor technologies that are native to the environment, right? It makes sense. It's an easy way to kind of tackle, I would say, the first hurdles of getting the rudimentary, the basic security controls in place. But quickly, of course, they find out that they need something a little bit more scalable, a little bit more dedicated to the use case. When I mean use case, so for example, if you are to deploy a web application firewall, you really do want to deploy something that is dedicated for that particular use case, not and has the expertise, has the know-how that can help you scale along with you moving your workloads to the cloud. So we see that it's a good idea. Perhaps two-thirds of these businesses do leverage initially the cloud native security solutions that are part of the cloud service provider, but they quickly find out as they try to build a hybrid environment, or even a multi-cloud environment, that they need to work with ISVs like us in order to basically put some guardrails around their on-prem legacy environments, and then some of the workloads getting shifted to the public cloud, and then some of them even getting shifted to other cloud service providers, right? So you have a truly hybrid or truly multi-cloud environment. You need essentially be able to have a single policy that roams across all of them, right? If you use, however, a native security solution to the cloud service provider itself, then you'll have to replicate the same policy for your legacy environment on the on-premises side, or if you go to, if you share workloads between AWS and Azure, you'll have to log in and configure them separately. So it becomes essentially a fragmented policy. And guess what? Fragmentation actually is one of the sources of insecurity. right? So we help customers to put guardrails in place that they can control from a single pane of glass, right? It's a control plane that spans across their cloud server providers of choice, but also covers their legacy environments. So, it's a two-pronged answer. First, native controls, but as they grow, as the workloads increase, they leverage more of the ISV security stacks like Barracuda's.
Thank you so much for that answer. So let's talk a little bit about some specific technologies. Mike, what did the participants in this report say about SD-WAN specifically?
Right. So, we asked a bunch of questions about like what's important to people as they look at SD-WAN, and I think one of the things that came out very clearly is this ability to intelligently optimize traffic, meaning traffic between your sites, traffic between your sites and the cloud and your remote workers and possibly whatever is left in the data center, optimizing all this traffic, and also its ability to optimize it to the SaaS applications. And one great example of that is Office 365. And by the way, we found out, as we expected, Office 365 being the sort of the most popular SaaS application in the remote work environment. And there's a lot of that technology can do to optimize user experience and do security at the same time. And an example in Office 365 is like if you're using Teams, clearly you need the best latency to be able to not have issues with that. But people using SharePoint, maybe bandwidth becomes more important, and so it's the ability of a SD-WAN system to be able to get that granular in how to manage that traffic. That's really important. The second thing is what Sinan just alluded to, is that increasingly people are trusting their cloud providers. They're willing to put more traffic on the cloud networks. We see that with things like the growth of Microsoft Virtual WAN. And they also told us specifically, because we asked them about that, they actually would trust a public cloud provider like Microsoft, specifically with Azure and Microsoft Global Network, to use that to replace their existing MPLS lines. So basically, people are ready to go all in on with their cloud providers.
And so what did we discover in this report about SaaS applications?
Right. I would say it was quite a bit eye-opening, but not surprising. We discovered that on average, an organization has about 30 plus SaaS applications. And of course, that's not even counting shadow IT, right? These are the ones that are officially sanctioned. If you go by median, it's a bit less than that. But, if you average out, because there's a long tail, there's about 30 SaaS applications, which is, insane if you think about it, right? 30 different vendors that you have proper contracts in place. You've been through the ULAs, you onboarded the vendors, and your business is using 30 SaaS applications. Right. I mean, this is actually even a bigger, I would say, digital transformation shift, that we're, migrating applications to public cloud, but we're even migrating more applications to just pure SaaS, right? So that's of course as expected, but I think the numbers were quite eye-opening.
Right, and I think people, are concerned with the security as they do that, as they move all this to SaaS applications. And some of the things that we asked in the report also is around kind of like what devices are they using to access these applications, and some things about bring your own device type things. And I think like what we're finding is that the IT departments pretty much have lost control over the ability to dictate to their users what devices they can use and that kind of a thing. And so in that environment, I think zero trust network access becomes a very key technology to help there, right, Sinan?
Yeah, most certainly. I think this is a losing battle that they're putting out there when it comes to company sanctioned devices to be able to access internal applications. That was perfectly possible in the age of, on-premises, applications and data access. But now with SaaS usage, as we said, increasing to a 30 odd applications that business uses every day, fighting that fight doesn't make any sense anymore, right? We should be more open to BYOD use, whether we're open or not, it's happening, right? So I think we should put in the right guardrails in place. The security controls should definitely be pushed out to those devices that our employees use, right? So for example, during the pandemic, we talked to a lot of our customers. Some of them, even though they might wanted to use, company provided devices to access, corporate applications, the supply chain was overburdened, right? They weren't able to ship laptops fast enough, right? To those traditionally desk-based employees with wired desktops, now suddenly they have to work from home. So guess what? They had to open up and relax their policies to use, their personal home computers. Sometimes, the very ones that they share with their children, right? So we have to basically adapt to this by building a smarter technology stack that actually assesses the posture of these devices before granting access, right? If everything checks out, if it's relatively safe, and the machine has all the proper hygiene in place, yes, of course, we should be able to let them access SaaS applications, internal applications, access their workloads. Just make sure that we have the proper controls in place to continuously validate the posture of that device.
And what did the participants tell us about the important attributes of their Zero Trust Network Access or ZTNA solution?
Right. I mean, they do want, of course, support across the board, right? Whether these are, Chromebooks, mobile devices like iPads and Android gadgets, they do want access to the same level of access and across all device types. Most importantly, they don't want their day-to-day workflows to be disrupted. They don't want to learn something new. They don't want to, dial into a web browser so that they can actually have some sort of a rudimentary JavaScript client to do the work that they used to do with a native client, right? They want to continue doing work as they used to. They want the security product to be, which is actually a core principle for security, right? You should be out of sight, out of the way. And if you need to block, you need to be helpful, right? So that's what they're expecting. They want their ZTNA solution to be out of sight, out of way. Do not interrupt the daily workflow. Do not change user behavior. But if you need to, because there's a posture issue, there's a security issue, then you should be helpful, right? You should be able to guide the user, in some cases, to self-remediate the security issue, or be able to help them open an IT help desk ticket to get the issue resolved quickly. But basically, be out of the way, just put in the guardrails in place. In some cases, help with the productivity and access performance, right? Improve latency, improve bandwidth usage. But if you need to really interrupt the flow, be helpful, right? That's their top expectations, I would say.
Sure, makes a lot of sense. So Sinan, can you tell us about some of the key offerings that Barracuda has in this SASE space?
Sure. We mentioned Zero Trust Network Access. So we do have a product called CloudGen Access that definitely covers that use case when it comes to access from users and their devices from anywhere, any location. But of course, we just don't work with, portable gadgets, right? We have sites, branches. We go and acquire another business, and now we need to connect them into our, applications and workloads. So we have subsidiaries, right? We have, in some cases, factory floors and environments that are, let's say outdoors, like outdoor CCTV cameras. So in order to put those and connect those devices securely together, we also offer a CloudGen WAN product, which is our secure SD-WAN offering. And of course, once you bring all these remote users, their devices, IoT, OT gadgets, sites, and branches all together, of course, our CloudGen firewall is essentially the security control center, if you will. The whole policy flows through that and makes sure that only explicitly granted devices and users and applications can access each other, and nothing flows through. So it provides, of course, the attack surface reduction and policy controls for the whole platform.
Great. And of course, our viewers can find more information about the solutions that we provide here on our website, barracuda.com. And both, we're coming to the end of the show already. Do you want to leave with any additional thoughts or advice?
Sure, I'll go, I guess.
Yeah, go ahead, Sinan.
Right. I think, we are going through a generational, I would say, once in a generational kind of a transformation, right? We are going to public cloud. We are going to more SaaS applications. I think the most important to be an enabler, be the champion. This is happening. Let's put in the guardrails in place, but make also sure that you serve your users, your employees as IT ops, as SecOps operators, the best possible way. We want to make them more productive. We don't want to put roadblocks. We just want to make sure that there's guardrails in place. They get the job done. And then if we do this right, we can also extend out, our talent base to the entire globe, right? If we have the proper security stack in place that can support hybrid work, that can support remote work, we can hire the best person for the job anywhere across the globe, and we can enable them, empower them, and get out of the way, but yet still have the proper security guardrails in place so we don't suffer data leaks, we don't suffer ransomware incidents. So that's where the future is going. It's a transformation that's happening. It's once in a generation kind of an opportunity. So I wish everybody go out there and tackle these challenges.
Yeah, yeah, and I would talk about three things. Looking at the report, looking at what's happening in the market. One is something that's really exciting, at least from my perspective, as we look at SASE and specific technologies like ZTNA and SD-WAN. The exciting thing is that you can have your cake and eat it too with this. You can both improve user experience and increase security with these technologies. And it's a unique opportunity right now to deploy these, because it's a win-win for the IT department, for the users. So very interesting set of technologies to take a look at, to try, to start deploying. And so the second thing with this is, like, if you were to kind of to build a roadmap, I would start with zero trust network access for high risk use cases, maybe, which is your remote workforce, but also your contractors and people like that. That's a good place to start. And finally, I would say, pay attention to this ransomware risk. It's real, it's out there, people are experiencing issues, and there are solutions that can help. And so that's the third point I would talk about.
Excellent. Well, thank you both. That is all the time we have today. So thank you for joining us today, Sinan and Mike. Appreciate your insights.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks everybody for joining. Really appreciate it.
And to all of our viewers, you can download this report, The State of Network Security in 2021, on barracuda.com. And remember that you can watch all of our LinkedIn live shows from the Barracuda LinkedIn page. And for now, that just leaves me to say, until next time, have a safe journey.